Welcome to the National Park College podcast, Common Nighthawks. My name is Wade Derden. Part of the intent of this podcast is to open the campus up so that we are not all strangers to one another. This is a growing campus with lots of change and lots of new faces and names. This podcast aims to break down silos on the campus while also showcasing some of the amazing talent that we have here at NPC. And so we are lucky to have as our second guest with us today, the very talented Eve Victory, Instructor of Hospitality and Tourism. So why don't we jump right in here, and you can just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I start off talking to my students every year and say I'm obviously not from around here. They can tell right off because even though I have tried to practice appropriate diction, the New Yorkie still pops out. I am a Brooklyn girl. I grew up there most of my life until roughly about 27 years old. Raised by a single mom, finished high school, went to college in Tarrytown, New York, because I didn't want to stay too far away from home. And somehow along the line subsequently wound up moving from New York to California because of jobs. I started out somehow in hospitality without even recognizing it. When you double major in biology and English lit, it makes it a little bit difficult to figure out what kind of career. So I started out with temp agencies, pretty much like everybody else who does, kind of just graduating from college without having a specific profession in mind. And I fell into events management because I was literally somebody's flunky assistant at first. For a while, an assistant to an assistant, in fact. And that sort of expanded over the years to even office management and planning and going to trade shows, conventions, meetings. I went to California to take a .com job. They even helped pay for my move. And 3 weeks after I was settled in, they closed. So that was the end of that adventure. But I thought, well, I'm here, I might as well do something. And that's where I had some experience with marketing, which always goes along with event planning. And I started working for a company out there called Aircraft Technical Publishers, and that's why my students always laugh when we talk about our little icebreaker things, like what's one thing that you'd never know about somebody else. One of my things on my bucket list is I really want to be a whirly girl. I want to learn how to fly a helicopter the proper way.
Oh,
that
really?
comes from working there. I got to Arkansas by way of, I guess, marketing, sales, wayward romance. He's the Southeast Regional salesperson. I was the marketing communications director, and I walked into Hot Springs and literally fell in love. It's a lot like upstate New York, where my father's side of the family is from, and that's why I'm here.
How long
and
have you
I'm
been
still
here?
This is my 16th year.
And we still haven't got that Brooklyn accent out of you yet.
No, you should see what happens when I have a glass of wine.
So biology and literature background, and now
that's a
you're in
mess.
hospitality. So how long have you been teaching in the hospitality program?
6.5 years now. It'll be this is 6 years, so it'll be 6.5 years by the time I'm done. So.
Is that all full-time, or is that including sort of part-time as well?
Yeah, it started out part-time, but they realized really quickly that didn't make any sense given the scope of the program. So yeah, but I kind of got to where I understood exactly how it was supposed to work. I went through this program. Well, you know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually went through this program, and that's kind of how I wound up getting to NPC in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I was hired by a Canadian company who subsequently laid me off with a bunch of other folks. And because of NAFTA and President Bill Clinton, I was able to go back to school. And I already had a bachelor's, so they kind of hemmed and hawed, and we petitioned, and then they let me come in. And I happened to live at the time 2 doors down from Mary Kay Worm, the career services director, and she said, I really think you should go talk to Carla. I said, okay, she said, you are in hospitality already. You need to see what it's like going to the other side. And I said, ooh, now I'm going to be the vendor and not the customer. So I talked to her, and of course that's
Carla Nardi.
Yes, that's Carla Nardi.
Yeah, she's the former director of the program.
Yes, and she was and is truly amazing person.
Yeah.
She's a mentor in many ways still.
Yeah, she's great.
So, in fact, when this job opened up, it was really funny. She went and told Dr. Carter, there's no choice, just choose her. I was so flattered when she said that, but.
Right, well,
So.
It's been good. So tell me a little bit about the hospitality program itself and what you teach in it.
Well, even when I took it, it was very food and beverage based. And I realized that part of the trepidation of continuing it after Carlo decided to retire was, well, there's big bad Pulaski down the road. Yes, it's 45 minutes, but still.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, but hospitality and food and beverage isn't the only element. There's so much more. So when I started teaching it, I kind of walked in blank and just kind of winged it. And,
You're the one with the literature.
Yes, I'm the one with the literature degree, and I'm making up words. Essentially what I started recognizing was, because I had gone and spoken to Renee Smith, who's the director there, and looked into Pulaski, and I thought, they have culinary primarily, they also have hospitality, but it's not really that robust. I think we need to start looking outside of the box. So after doing this for a couple of years, I had discussed the idea of actually changing the program and only making it half food and beverage. And the partnership, industry contacts, I couldn't think of the word, the partnership went right along with that. They loved that idea. They wanted more focus on hotels, more focus on travel, more focus on tourism. So we literally cut half of the program out that was based on food and beverage, left half in, but then replaced it with things like introduction to tourism, and events management got included, and hotel ops was always there, but we sort of added customer service and a few other things in there, and even leadership and hospitality. So the program is now way more well-rounded, and the students actually feel like when they walk into an interview or they walk into an operation and get hired, they always come back and tell me, oh my goodness, Miss Eve, all that junk that I thought was junk when you taught us is not junk. They say several things like that, because we always tease that it's a lot of business language, a lot of high language to them, but that it applies, the concepts always apply. So that's kind of a cool thing to get when you say affirmation, right? That's a really neat thing to learn.
Right. So just sort of on that same line, how big is the program right now?
We've currently got, if I look at students overall, there's 16 students in all different places. Some of them are able to do it all at one time, all the classes during the 5 or 6 classes during the week. Others sort of take it in pieces depending upon work schedule. Anywhere from 40 to 60% work full time when they come in. So, and the ones that work full time and go to class full time blow me away.
Right.
They always do. They find a way through. They're going to do it. So it's kind of inspiring in its own way. I see how tired they are, and they're still there. But now that we have a lovely grant from Oaklawn,
I know, we're excited.
Plans to build and start anew somewhere else. That sort of changes the whole scope in my mind. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I've got a few things bubbling up in my brain for the next 3 to 5 years.
Just hold those in. We'll save those for later.
I am.
Yeah, I'm excited about that as well. We've had some pretty good successes though from that program, haven't we? I mean, other than you.
Oh, haha. No, yes, I actually have one of my goals for 2019 and 2020 is I'm actually going to try to create a template, for lack of a better word, to follow up with certain students that I know that have literally moved up in the ranks. I mean, it's gotten to a point where my first year students, I'm actually helping him graduate right now with an independent study, and he's 25 years old. He's almost exactly half my age. We have birthdays like maybe 5 years apart. He makes more money than I do. He's had more kinds of jobs than I ever have, and he talks constantly about how hospitality and tourism should be everything about customer service, everything we learn about service should be the basis for every job on earth. And he cracks me up because he has literally made correlations between working for Regions Bank and working in hospitality to a degree that kind of is creepy in its own way.
Service oriented.
But yeah, it is literally. But I have lots of wonderful success stories, including someone. I mean, she just graduated 2 years ago, and they moved her from being a bartender while she was in the program into, I guess, they didn't really have a specific position for her, but she was sort of assisting the food and beverage manager, and now she's the assistant food and beverage manager. And she has already been told that if this person disappears, she's a shoo-in.
Yeah.
So, and that comes from that base. It really comes from that base of knowledge, because they can literally apply everything they learn in the program into the work day by day force, literal. It's very cool.
It's a good program for this region in particular. All right, we're going to switch gears.
Okay.
Who would you say is the biggest influence on who you've become and why?
Okay, I'm going to try to do it with a straight face and not be funny. Oddly enough, I'm going to say my mom, which is very strange for me because I have a very odd relationship with my mother. We've always loved each other as much as we've hated each other. But the one thing that my mom gave me that is completely and totally invaluable is the fact that, other than basic biology, I never knew the difference between me being a boy or a girl, in the sense that I was never taught in any capacity that there was nothing I couldn't do because I was female. I had absolutely no concept of it. In fact, to a degree that when I moved out here, and this may be slightly detrimental, but it's just true, I was in a group of couples when I first came out here, because my neighbors wanted to introduce me to different folks and whatever. And I was sitting, I guess, on the side where the men were monopolizing the conversation. To this day, I don't even remember what we were talking about. But I chimed in, and I started talking with them, and all the women on the right side of the table stopped speaking. I thought, now what did I do? And I still laugh and say, I'm from New York, so I have excuses for everything, right? But it was an odd circumstance. And one of the women actually told me, she said, well, normally when we're like this, we kind of talk amongst ourselves, and they talk amongst themselves. I'm like, they? What's a they? Again, so I have no real concept of that. And that really does come from my mom. My mother it never had anything to do with, oh, well, you're a girl, so never. Yeah. A couple other folks, one is a very close friend, and to sum him up, he taught me to repeat the phrase to myself, and still repeats it on a regular basis. And let me get this right. A reaction, or lack thereof, probably has absolutely nothing to do with you, Eve, and everything to do with the other person. So it's sort of that idea of, we are all responsible for how we react. It's not necessarily what's coming from the outside. And then the other is from a supervisor who kind of summed me up one day and made me laugh so hard I never ever forgot it. He said I was the epitome of, you can't ride two horses with one ass. And I knew exactly what he meant, because it's kind of like, okay, you really do have to choose the direction you're going. You can't just sit around and, I'm not a waffler. I kind of have to have some path. And you don't get anywhere if you sit and spin. And it kind of, those are my two folks. It goes to show you say the three folks that influenced me the most.
You crack me up, Eve.
Yeah.
You are always challenging the norms, and that is okay.
What's norm?
Right. That's a good thing. So what's one of the best experiences that you had here at the college that you believe others would enjoy or would want to remember?
That actually goes back to Carla Nardi. When I agreed to take this job, she sat down with me. We talked about it a really long time, because I was nervous. I've never formally taught anything. I've coached people in organizations over the years. I've taught software programs. I've explained processes and things like that, and led groups at breakout sessions, at conventions and stuff, but nothing this formal, where you're actually responsible for their learning. It's a very, very different circumstance than being in a group of people that are supposed to actually be paying attention to you. And when I sat with Carla, she sort of warned me, I guess. She said, I know you're excited. And she said, I want you to be excited, and I want you to to, you know, put all the energy that you have into it the way you do for everything. She said, but I want you to remember that there's a piece of this that has to satisfy you. And I said, of course, just like any other job or whatever the heck I said to her. And she said, no. She said, this is different. She said, you have to find meaning in it. She said, if you don't find meaning in it, you're going to burn out. I said, okay. I'm thinking, well, I've worked way longer hours, a million. That's the way I've always worked. I've worked 60-hour weeks all the time. What's the difference? I started understanding what she meant by the middle of the first semester. She had explained to me that there has to be something where there's genuine affection for them, that I have to care not just about my purpose, but about them as individuals and what they're getting. And never mind the warm and fuzzy stuff, but one day, like an epiphany, I got it. We're sitting there and I'm proctoring the exam and I'm watching all of them. And it was the very first time, you know, it's not that it wasn't the first exam, but for whatever reason it was particularly quiet. I guess I was in the right zone. And all of a sudden I realized I was feeling particularly emotional, and I thought, oh my God, my eyes are stinging, what's wrong with me? And I realized what had occurred to me is everything that we talk about, everything that we experience in that classroom, every one of those brains in my room is going over right now. And it means something different to every single one of them. Some are just trying to get it right on the test. Some of them are thinking about careers. It means something different to every single one of them. And when they say that an instructor can actually shape someone, I recognized the responsibility and got all goosebumpy and emotional. And yeah, and so Carla was absolutely right.
I've had that exact same experience.
It's like a self-actualization moment. And that's what messes me up to this day, because I think, oh, by now I'm seasoned enough, I shouldn't have it. Nope. Every year there's one or two. Every year. So.
I think that's interesting because I've sat, and maybe it's just the testing environment, maybe it's something there. I distinctly remember having that same feeling sitting, you know, at the desk in the front, and students got their heads down, they're writing on their test, they're filling out essays or whatever it is,
Right.
and sort of anticipating what I'm going to get when I come in, but also thinking that each one of these students is experiencing this in a different way, from a different perspective,
Yeah.
and they have sort of a different reason for being in this class. And mostly it was curiosity on my part, like, I want to know what that is a little bit more. I want to know what that thought process is for each one of these students, and maybe what I can do to tap into it. And
Right.
so I think, you know, that goes to Carla's point about finding meaning in teaching. I agree with her on that. You can't just show up every day.
Right. There's some jobs you can
punch
do
the
that.
clock.
Yes,
right?
there's some jobs you can just show up and then leave
Yeah.
it there when you go home. You can't leave this there. You just can't.
Yeah.
You just can't.
It's kind of like mission work, you know. you kind of gotta believe it.
Some years that's an understatement.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I understand exactly what you're saying. I
Yeah.
do. That's really neat. That's neat.
So, you know, in your experience now, you've been teaching long enough. What makes a good teacher?
Oh, Wade, you're hurting me. What makes a good teacher? Somebody who can anticipate needs, just like we learn in hospitality. I've got different number of students depending upon what's going on in the classroom. And you got to be able to kind of gauge. You're always on stage. Just like in hospitality too, which is very funny. Doesn't matter what's going on with me, I got to walk in the door and the smile got to come on and I got to have the energy to teach it. And they know, we spend enough time together, they can kind of tell if Miss Eve is tired or something or other. And but it's that ability to read them. You know, you can kind of tell by body language when you're losing somebody. And in my case, I actually feel very, very fortunate for that. It's the same students over and over. I don't have 50, 60, 70 different students in different courses that I'm teaching. It's
Right.
always the same group, and that creates a completely different atmosphere than someone who's just got students rotating when you're teaching, you know, accounting one to them, accounting one, or whatever it is, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So getting to know them and recognizing who they are individually and changing up what I do. Sometimes I just get kind of cuckoo and I sort of swing into a nanny, you know, the nanny, the show. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And
Oh,
by the time,
oh,
and
I
some of them,
thought about that show a
yeah,
long
some
time.
of them are rolling, and other ones are like, oh my God, she just needs to stop. And when I finally see where it's getting to that threshold, I'll just burst out and go, or something like this, to keep them going, and then they all laugh with me. But you got to be able to find a reason, even just to stand up and stretch, or silly things like that, because it is very, very difficult to listen that long. We try to break it up with field trips, we break it up with videos, but sooner or later you're back to the grind of, okay, tell me what you think about this part of the section. We're going to break up into groups, or I'm going to talk about this, and then you all chime in. We're going to kind of have a discussion group today, and I'll sit in the middle of the room, or something. A classroom is still a classroom. Something to sort of perk them up, to be flexible yourself when you feel like you're losing it. And I'm just going to kind of go there. You actually have to give a damn.
Yeah.
That's where that self-actualization and that meaningfulness comes in. You have to care that hopefully you're good enough that you do help them, but you have to care that you're helping them. You have to care that you're giving of yourself. It literally has to be, like we said, service. There's a giving element in this. And if it doesn't make you happy to give, you should not be an instructor.
That's a good point.
Yeah, because there's a lot of time in between. This is not just and in my case even more so because it's the same team, excuse me, same group all the time. They're going to come to you with all kinds of stuff. And it is not always just, oh, I had trouble with this homework. And you have to care about them as an individual. You have to understand that some of them have disabilities. You have to understand that sometimes you have to even morph yourself, and you may be dead tired by 4:30, 5 o'clock at the end of the day. But that student who sends an email and said, Miss Eve, I know our classes start at 9:30 tomorrow. Can I at least meet with you at 8 o'clock? I'll be here really early, please, please, please. Okay, I got volunteer work, but I'll be here. And that's what I think matters too. It's almost like anything on an interview. One of the things that I've read over and over and over, and even heard from people like the HR director at Embassy Suites, if an interviewer or a supervisor or a manager or whomever it is feels like you just really don't care, it doesn't matter how fabulous the job is, it doesn't matter how skilled the person is, it doesn't matter what you've got in front of you, if they feel like it doesn't really matter to someone, it changes the experience, it dulls it.
Right.
So that engagement, I think, really matters in being a good teacher.
I agree. That's a good point. All right, we're going to do a few lightning round questions here.
Okay.
Just short questions, quick answers, really, although I reserve the right to sort of delve into them a little bit.
Okay.
If I'm curious.
Okay.
Just a few. So, what's your favorite book?
The easy answer to say is almost anything by John Irving. I love Cider House Rules.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've read it. And then I also like Elizabeth George. She writes a lot of murder mysteries. I like her a lot. But that's my first choice right off. Okay. My whole life, on and off, I've been picking up my John Irving novels.
That's interesting. I read that, and I read another of his books long ago, but I can't remember which one it was now.
Prayer for Owen Meany.
That's it. That's probably it.
Yeah.
It was Prayer for Owen Meany.
Garp.
So what's your favorite song?
That's really hard.
No, I couldn't answer that.
That's really, really, really hard because depending upon the mood, that music goes along with that. It would be easier for me to say artist. Can I go ahead and go that way?
Sure.
Am I allowed?
Yes.
Probably just about anything by Queen, except for I Want to Ride My Bicycle. I don't understand what's wrong with that song. Anyway, I like The Doors. I even have a favorite hair band because I was an 80s teen. I was crazy about Def Leppard. I even went down to Fort Smith to go see them. But I've got everything. Sometimes there's even a place for Judas Priest. I've got everything from Judas Priest to Barry Manilow in my collection. So this is really rough for me.
Yeah. I hear you. I'm the same way. I've got so much music in my house.
Yeah, and it kind of depends.
Yeah, I've got tapes still that never get listened to because I don't have a tape player. So but I hear you. Def Leppard was great. I like that. What's your favorite food?
Oh, that's easy. Artichokes. Hands down. Sorry, it's just true. It's just true.
Artichokes.
Artichokes is always my first reaction. It's like my favorite flavor. It's my favorite everything. It's an engaging. When you eat a whole artichoke, it engages every one of your senses when you eat it, which is why I like it.
I have no doubt of that.
But now I'll give you a normal example. Okay,
Uh-huh.
I'll give you a normal. There's a funny story, but I'm not going to tell you because we don't have enough time. About an artichoke and a southerner. Anyway.
Yeah, it's probably not appropriate either.
No, it actually wasn't so bad. But it needs visual, and that won't work here. The other thing, though, I will say, and this is very, very New York, so we come back from where we started, a really, really good, soft on the inside, chewy on the outside, New York, everything seeded with the onions, everything bagel with cream cheese, but a schmear of cream cheese with the lox in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I gotta have lox. And capers need to go on it too, but that's when I make it myself. You're not gonna get that when you're walking around. Yeah, that's it.
That is very New York.
Yeah, there's nothing like that in the whole world to me.
Of all the foods in the world, though, an artichoke would not have been what I expected.
I know that. A lot of people would say that. Yeah, that's one of my picks for the desert island too. Yeah.
Oh,
We're gonna.
A desert island full of artichokes, I would starve to death.
But you'd have bagels and lox.
Right.
And cream.
That'd be fine. That'd be fine. So, what brings you the most joy in your daily life?
Oh. Okay. We'll do this easy. It's funny. I don't know why this just popped into my head. My cat, my kid, and my coffee. Does that work?
That's great. That works great. I like that.
Okay.
I mean, I could probably say his name.
That's
although
funny.
I'm not the cat. I'm not a cat guy. I'm a dog guy.
I used to be. I had a little Pomeranian for 17 years, and he was the love of my life. This cat came to visit us, starving to death.
Mm-hmm.
Just picked our backyard. I'm like, please no. I can't care for anything else. It was actually really shortly after my mom had gone in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of taking care of anything really
Right.
disturbed me. But then it was one of those situations where another cat was bullying the cat that I got used to feeding and taking care of in the backyard. And he has no front claws, so he obviously belonged to somebody else that's
Right.
fixed.
Yep.
And this cat took one swipe at what's now my cat. And I said, that's it. I grabbed the broom. I literally chased this cat down the block. I mean, I aerated his rear end at one point with the broom. And that cat never came back. And I walked into the house and I said, that's it. The cat's coming inside.
This one that you kept. So you were defending the other
That
one.
was it. That was it.
Right. Okay, if you could have dinner with one historical figure, who would it be?
Oh, let's see. If I was younger, I'd say Lord Byron, because when I was in my teens and early 20s, I was always attracted to emo, poor, pathetic freaks that were obnoxious and arrogant, which is probably the same reason why I love House MD. Now, maybe it sounds a little bit.
Oh my gosh. I suddenly had a vision of you sitting on your couch with your cat watching House eating artichokes.
That's good. That's good. And Joy would be eating them with me. She loves them too. Let's see. It's a toss-up between Teddy Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
I know it's because they're like polar opposites. That huge personality
Mm-hmm.
versus the quiet, calm thinker. That's probably right. If I could choose someone who's not quite historical, but I always said, they go through all those games you play when you're in
Right.
your teens and 20s. Oh, who would you meet? Who would you want to meet? I always wanted to meet Robin Williams.
Oh yeah, that
Always.
would probably be a lot of fun.
Always. And I just always, to like kind of figure, how does that tick? Because that mind is like maniacal. At the same time as delightful, and obviously at the same time as very melancholy, but all of it together.
I would like to be a fly on the wall with you having a conversation with Robin Williams. That'd be funny. All right, so it's time. We're going to open the conversation up a little bit to the tech crew here. Abby Hanks and Miriam Baldwin are with us. You have any questions?
So what do you think is the most important single thing that you want your students to walk out of your class with? Most important idea, most important. If you can pick one.
I can pick one because they all know there's certain things that they never, ever, ever forget. SWOT. I'm constantly telling them that life is SWOT. If you don't know your strengths, if you don't know your weaknesses, if you don't know your opportunities, if you don't know your threats, and you don't take advantage of improving them or using them, you're going to go nowhere.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Mm-hmm.
A little SWOT analysis on life.
That's exactly right. I even talk about brushing your stinking teeth in the morning about it, and they laugh because they can't imagine putting it to something that small and simple that we do it constantly and we don't even realize.
Mm-hmm. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. That's your business background.
Yeah, it is. It
Yep.
is, but it applies to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that conversation with Lord Byron. That would be really whack, John.
My question, is there something in life that you considered to be, like, I guess a failure, but it ended up being something that was, like, right for your path of life?
That's a good question.
Yeah, why are you asking me? Yes. That stint of going from New York to California. Needless to say, when you walk in the door thinking you're going to have this brand new kind of career and brand new experience in life and brand new everything, and you're so important they'll even help pay for you to go cross country, and then it completely falls in your lap. I'm certainly not ashamed to say that I literally did almost nothing for 3 months. And paid $1,400 for a one-bedroom apartment, and that was then.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it was devastating, literally. I don't know how else to say it. And that's an age thing too, because it's like, okay, well, I was 27 years old, and you're right cresting into that, ooh, my career is moving on, and whatever, and all of a sudden for it to come to this halt, this dead halt. Had that not happened, though, I would not have continued in event planning and marketing and hospitality. And the only reason I say that that's important is that in that process, I met people that set me up every step of the way, if I look at it, to turn into something that I never thought would happen. I never wanted kids. I don't have biological children. But I am mom to two amazing stepchildren. One is 23, now living in California, and one is Joy right now, who I am raising as my own. And apparently that's what I was meant to do, to take care of other people's kids. Mm-hmm. And had I not gone to California, that whole process wouldn't have started.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Fascinating. Anything else?
What kind of answers did you think I was going to give you?
I mean, that was something philosophical and world changing.
I don't do that.
I don't do that. Kind of is.
Yeah.
I don't do that.
I don't know. There's something philosophical about that. I mean,
yes, there is, but I'm not particularly.
You just got to roll. You roll with it. You know, when life gives you artichokes, you roll with it, right?
Apparently.
Yes, you eat them. You eat them. You even don't ever throw out the stem. The stem is gold.
We're gonna have to have a lesson.
A whole lesson on artichokes. Everybody's missing out.
Abby, do you have another question?
Okay.
I got one more. So do you think there was anything from your business background that helped you in the field of education?
Oh, absolutely. I always tease about corporate mania because that's what it felt like. Knowing the way a business actually works, hospitality or otherwise, that helps enormously because I can think of examples I can constantly relate to. Knowing what I knew also helped me start a personal chef business all on my own, and that went ahead and contributed to the stories and things that I can explain to them. The other thing, though, that I think is even more important than any of that is the team building skills that I got. We literally had, professional development, whatnot. Everybody's always got to have certification in something or other, whatnot. And I actually worked for a very, very progressive company, the last company that I worked for in New York. And professional development was key to what you literally sat down for your evaluation. They just wanted to always make you bigger and better than you were. Totally focus on learning organization improvement stuff. Really, really lucky. That's actually where that obnoxious quote of horses and
Right,
two
yeah.
horses on one ass.
Uh,
Yeah, okay.
I knew that was going to come back around.
Yeah, of
eventually.
course it has to. It has to. It's the funniest part. Anyway, well, other than the artichokes, I guess I can find a way to put those together. So from that perspective of team building, that really, really makes an enormous difference in hospitality, just like all other industries, but more so in that because of the circumstances. You are forced to work with people you don't like in conditions that are too hot or too cold, too many hours, too much noise, things you can't control, because part of the hospitality product is really intangible. It's service, and you don't know what customer is coming in. That's part of your product too. The screaming baby that gets brought in where the reunion is in the room next door, they'll get annoyed, but you can't do anything about that. That's a customer as well. So that team building thing where you learn about each other, we even do the colors test, so that they kind of learn each other's personality somewhat. It makes a big difference. There has to be a gelling so they understand that whether or not I really like you, I can learn to appreciate something about you. So.
Well, very good. I think we'll wrap it up here. I want to say thanks, Eve, for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's always fun to sit down and chat with you for a while. Listeners, if we've only touched the surface, I guarantee you, with Eve Victory here. So you should grab a coffee with this woman someday. Also, special thanks to Abby Hanks and Miriam Baldwin for technical and editorial support. They really make the podcast possible. I do very little in comparison. Remember, everyone, you don't just come to the college, you go out to be the college. So thanks for listening. Be good and do good.